The road to the cabin twisted like something dying, the trees leaning in too close, their gnarled branches clawing at the car. She sat beside me, her breath fogging the window, her fingers tracing invisible shapes on the glass. The air smelled like damp earth, like something buried too deep to remember. The cabin stood at the edge of a lake, black water rippling despite the still air. The porch sagged, its wooden boards swollen from rot. I told myself it was charming, rustic, but the way the shadows clung to the corners made my stomach twist. Inside, the walls pulsed with the heat of the old wood stove. Dust hung in the air, thick and cloying. A single deer head watched us from above the fireplace, its glass eyes milky. Wrong. She laughed as she sprawled onto the old couch, her limbs folding in ways that seemed too long, too thin in the flickering light. Night fell heavy. The wind howled through the trees, something knocking against the window. The forest whispered in a voice just low enough to make me doubt my own ears. A shadow moved outside. I stood frozen, breath locked in my throat. But when I looked again, there was nothing, just the trees, shuddering like they were afraid. She pressed herself against me, her body warm and fragile, but her heartbeat slow, too slow, like something waiting. The power flickered, the walls groaned, something scratched beneath the floorboards. I held my breath. It was light at first, a gentle scraping, then frantic, a frenzy of claws against the wood. The floor shifted beneath my feet, soft, wet. I yanked the rug back, dark slats of wood split open like ribs, something black seeping through the cracks. I stepped away. She didn't move. The scratching stopped. Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound wasn't from the door. It came from inside the walls. The deer head above the fireplace tilted, its mouth parting. Something pulsed behind its teeth. She was staring at it, her lips parted in something like recognition. I grabbed her wrist, but her skin was ice. The knock came again, closer, faster, desperate. The floorboards snapped like brittle bones. A shape slithered through the cracks, thin, too thin, stretching, twisting. A limb, human but wrong, its joints bending in sickening angles. Another hand, another. I yanked her up, dragging her toward the door. The walls shuddered, splitting open like rotten fruit. Fingers poured out, grasping, twisting, stretching for us. Faces pressed through the peeling wallpaper. Smiling, slack-jawed, identical to hers. She let out a breath, one long and slow. The cabin breathed with her. The door slammed shut before I could reach it. The room folded inward, the ceiling bending, beams groaning. The walls cracked, black roots spilling from their wounds, twisting toward us. I pulled her close, whispering something, anything. The deer's mouth ripped open. A voice slithered out, not a sound, but a feeling. Thick, sticky, crawling into my ears, my skin, my bones. Stay, she smiled, not her. Something inside her. Her head tilted too far back, a marionette cut from its strings. The thing beneath the floor giggled. I tore myself away. The walls screamed. Something burst from the ceiling, a hand, too long, joints clicking like wet pebbles. It reached for me. I grabbed the fire poker from the hearth, swung hard. The limbs split like old leather, black liquid oozing from the wound. A shriek followed, 100 voices tangled in agony. She was staring at me, her face flickering between something soft and human and something hungry. Please, I mouthed. Her body jerked. She let out a breath, ragged, broken. Her fingers twitched, fighting something unseen. Then, she moved, she ran. I followed. The cabin collapsed around us, the walls splintering, the floor breaking apart. Hands clawed from the wood, dragging themselves free, hundreds of them, all her face, all screaming. The door shuddered open. We hit the cold night air. The trees closed in behind us, the ground twisting, roots writhing like snakes. The lake boiled, black and thick. The wind laughed. We ran. The forest stretched endless. The trees opened their mouths, whispering. The voices crawled into my skull. But she held my hand, tight, real. And then, the road. We burst from the trees, gasping, stumbling into the headlights of a parked car. Ours. The engine still warm, as if we had never left. The forest behind us stood still, silent, waiting. I collapsed against the car, my skin burning where the cabin had touched me. She stood beside me, her breath fogging in the cold air. Her eyes were clear, her heartbeat was normal. But then, she reached into her pocket, pulled out something small, a splinter of wood. It pulsed, a heartbeat. I stepped back. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rot, of damp earth, of something waiting. She met my gaze. The cabin was gone. But it wasn't finished. Not yet. Not ever.